Welcome, I'm Nina Griffin, and this is the Astrology and Magic channel. Today, we'll talk about the astrology of COVID-19 in 2022 and beyond. First off, I wanted to say thank you to all of my patrons. I appreciate all of your support. If you would like to get access to astrology and magic videos early, and in some cases content that's only available to patrons, you can go to patreon.com/Nina Griffin. You can also sign up at the highest tier for my monthly magical elections document, which gives you information about how to make astrological talismans, and it gives you the best times for the coming month on how to do that. So forecasting is difficult. And I think this is one of the things that always I try to keep in mind when I look at astrological predictions about something as difficult as the pandemic. Just because over the last couple of years, we've definitely seen many astrologers make all kinds of predictions about the future of COVID-19. And it's, I think, very, very tough to get this right. I've seen a lot of different techniques being used, from Vedic to Western to traditional to Uranian, just really everything you can imagine. People are throwing it at the pandemic just to see what will work and what will give us some kind of meaningful narrative about what we've all been experiencing. And I do remember that a number of astrologers were predicting an end to the pandemic in 2020. And even though, of course, in retrospect, they were wrong, I think it's worthwhile to realize that this issue is not necessarily confined to somebody's mastery of astrological techniques. That's not necessarily the problem. The real issue is that it's kind of a general lack of subject matter expertise in what is literally a new virus. I think that to do a good job of forecasting in any field, whether financial, weather, politics, the pandemic, what have you, you don't just need to know astrology, but you also need to know and understand the subject matter very well. And I don't know any astrologers who are also infectious disease professionals, but the truth is that even if they were, I think that even scientists and professionals don't have a clear sense of how and when the pandemic will end. Certainly, no expert, no respected expert will give you an end date on the pandemic because there are just too many variables and, frankly, variants, as we've seen. So the truth is that none of us really know when and how this is going to end, which can feel very uncomfortable. I think that whenever times are difficult, we naturally want to gravitate to someone who acts like they have all the answers. But the truth is that I don't think astrologers have the answers. I don't think the scientists have the answers. We're all just learning about this novel virus, and we're trying to figure out, okay, do we have enough information to know what it'll do next? So with that said, I have some ideas about COVID and astrology. And these are thoughts that I've been putting together over the last several months. I certainly don't intend to do a running commentary on the pandemic, but this is something that started to approximate kind of a theory, and I wanted to share it with you. I also wanted to share it because, as far as I know, it's a fairly novel theory. And so if you do see it on social media and in other videos, well, you'll know you heard it here first. So let's go right to it. So I wanted to make a few observations about what I call sensitive signs. Modern mundane astrology is very focused on aspects between planets as key drivers of events and actions. So people will spend a lot of time talking about, the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, and this happens. And then, the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in a few years is going to bring us this. And of course, these are extremely important things. So I don't want to lessen the impact of these aspects. However, a traditional approach is to give equal or even greater weight to signs. And if you're a traditionalist, you know what I mean. A city, a region, or a country may be ruled by a sign. It probably doesn't have a chart because, of course, a lot of places were not founded in a particular moment that we know of. But there are certain signs associated with those places. And whenever there is major planetary activity in a particular sign, well, the places ruled by that sign will experience corresponding activity in that location. Now, the challenge with a global pandemic, of course, is that there is no one sign that covers the entire planet. So it's very hard to say, oh, okay, well, when these planets leave this sign, it's going to stop, or whatever you want to say. However, we do have information because we have now gone through over 2 years of the pandemic. And so we can see that certain events seem to correspond to certain kinds of signs being transited. We do know that the pandemic started with the two superior planets, Jupiter and Saturn in Capricorn, and that the pandemic really kicked off, particularly with things like lockdowns and so on, when Mars in Capricorn joined them. Now, of course, Pluto had been in Capricorn already for a number of years, perhaps kind of just waiting to be triggered by these visible planets when they finally all came around. So, in my mind, I think that Capricorn is a very strong candidate to be the sign of the pandemic in a global sense. Of course, individual locations will have their own variations, but if we try to kind of find an umbrella sign that the pandemic seems to correspond to, I would argue that Capricorn is a pretty good candidate based on some of these correlations. Now, this idea I've had for a while, but it was really confirmed for me when we had Mercury and Venus transiting Capricorn at the end of 2021 and early 2022. I think that these two planets, even though they're inferior planets, meaning that they are essentially faster than or as fast as the Sun, when they're slow moving, they start acting like outer planets. And when I say outer planets, I also mean the superior, so Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. What happens is that when a planet goes very slowly, as planets will do when they're retrograde or stationing, they are going at a very, very deliberate speed. And so during that period, they are activating that sign, they're acting on that sign in a similar way as the way that a superior planet might act on that sign when it's just kind of undergoing its normal motion. Now, of course, that as these inferior planets, Mercury and Venus, progress through Capricorn, we can see that I think they brought about Omicron, number of infections and deaths, and generally the interruption of normal life, I think very similar to the initial 2020 lockdowns. So just to look at some of these dates, you'll see the correlations that I'm talking about. So Mercury moved very slowly, and he was actually in Capricorn starting December 13th, 2021, and then spent the better part of the next 2 months there, exiting February 14th. He was in Aquarius for a little part, but most of his motion was in fact in Capricorn. Now Venus, I think, is the one that made the real impact because she entered Capricorn November 4th, 2021, and she left it, or will be leaving it, March 5th, 2022. So that's quite a long time. That's a 4-month period. Note, by the way, that Omicron was first detected in samples that were collected November 11th. So about a week after Venus entered Capricorn, those are the earliest samples we know of today that Omicron was in. Now, at the same time, you may be aware, when this video is recorded, Mars is also passing through Capricorn. Now, he is moving fairly quickly, and he is the fastest of all the superior planets. He's faster than Jupiter, faster than Saturn. So his impact in Capricorn is definitely felt, although I would argue it's certainly not as heavy as Jupiter and Saturn because he's direct and he's very quick right now. Now, Mars will leave Capricorn the same as Venus, March 5th. So I think that that date in many ways is going to bookend kind of the end of Omicron for most of the locations in the world. After this date, we will not have any planets in Capricorn except Pluto until December 2022, at which point Mercury will spend about 2 months in Capricorn due to being retrograde. I am hopeful that this period will be less intense than Omicron because Venus will not be involved. She won't be retrograding through Capricorn at that time because obviously I think Omicron took, 2 inferior planets moving pretty slowly through Capricorn to bring Omicron about. And at the end of 2022, we're just going to get one, and it's the lighter one. It's the one that only spends 3 weeks retrograde, which is Mercury. So if Capricorn is the sign of the pandemic, that means that we will not be fully done with the pandemic until all the outer, superior, and retrograde planets are no longer triggering Capricorn. I think Pluto is the most significant of all of these, and if you are surprised that I use it as a traditional astrologer, I do use it for these kinds of collective movements. I think the outer planets can be very helpful in giving us a sense of these larger influences that we are experiencing kind of as humanity. Now, Pluto will leave Capricorn for Aquarius for approximately the duration of the spring of 2023, so about 3 months, which I think will give us the first real breather and a sense of liberation. There isn't the sense that we're just waiting for COVID to come back. I think that the beginning of the end of the pandemic could happen at this time, so spring 2023. Then we're going to get Pluto back in Capricorn the rest of 2023, and then Pluto will be out of Capricorn for most of 2024, and the world will really start to put the pandemic behind them that year. So depending on your own risk assessment and your risk tolerance, you may say, well, 2023 starts to look brighter, and then 2024 starts to look a lot more like something like normalcy. I don't think 2022 is going to be quite that year yet. Now, I did want to point out a couple of other influences in 2022 that other people have commented on as being influential in the pandemic, and I think they're right. The first one is Jupiter conjoining Neptune in Pisces, and that happens in April in 2022. I think Jupiter conjoining Neptune will certainly give a feeling of optimism and maybe even a disregard for boundaries. People might feel really done with having to follow rules. But, in weather astrology, which traditionally also concerned itself with epidemics, the combination of Jupiter and Neptune is actually considered an epidemic breeder, so to speak. So I wouldn't consider it the end of any epidemic disease. I don't think it's necessarily the most auspicious aspect when we're hoping to see an end to COVID. The other influence that I think is important to mention is Saturn square Uranus. Now, that is officially over because those planets made an aspect 3 times in 2021 and have now separated. However, they will draw quite close in the third quarter of 2022, actually within a degree, without actually perfecting the square. So that Saturn square Uranus influence will still be present, I think, as a potential threat on and off throughout this year. It's certainly better than 2021, where they were pretty close together and they were always making those aspects. I would remind you that Saturn opposition Uranus was the aspect that marked the 1918 flu pandemic, so that aspect is quite closely connected with epidemic illness. I don't think there is much in 2022, at least based on my examination, that suggests the end of the pandemic this year. On the bright side, I think that a lot of the planetary pressure that we saw in 2021 and early 2022 will come off pretty quickly. But I think it's only in 2023 that we start seeing real lasting progress instead of this kind of back and forth, oh, COVID is back, okay, time to be more cautious kind of lifestyle. As I mentioned in my annual forecast for 2022, I think it's really important for us to stay flexible in 2022, but also optimistic, recognizing that no epidemic lasts forever. It may just feel that way. All right, thanks for watching. I'm Nina Griffin, and this is the Astrology and Magic channel.